As hopefully everyone knows, I'm Catherine Garland, president of MAAR, and we have Nick Jones, who was just speaking. That's our MLS director at MAAR on staff. We have our MLS committee chair, Jeff Burress with Crowlike, and Amanda Lott, who is also on the MLS committee with us as well. I appreciate everyone being here today. Anytime that we have any changes to MLS rules and regulations or policy changes or changes to our forms or anything like that, we tend to roll these out to our managing brokers first because it is upon the burden of the managing broker to translate, train, and supervise your agents in your office. So the hope is that you will take this information, absorb it, and train your staff, agents in your office on the changes. Like Nick said, we are recording this so that it is available for y'all to be able to show the agents in your office, and we will also probably have some follow-up training as well. It is a lot of ins and outs to the changes, so we hope that everyone can start using it properly and also ask and answer any questions that you have about it. So I appreciate you being here. I'm actually going to switch off to being an attendee for the rest of the session. So again, I appreciate everyone being here. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Catherine. I appreciate it. And I'm going to flip you to an attendee. See you, Catherine. So yeah, that's one thing I did forget to do was introduce myself. So thank you, Catherine. I'm Nick Jones, the MLS director at MAAR. I'm joined by Jeff Burress, who is the 2020 MLS Information Network Committee chairman, and Amanda Lott, who was on the MLS committee last year, is on the MLS committee this year, is joining us to help the discussion. And you may see Kate Redden, who is her little avatar is still visible on the screen. She's helping out with the webinar. So so we may see her, we may see her go away, but just let you know who that is. But the way I kind of want to handle this is I'll start with a brief overview of the topic, and I'll let Jeff and Amanda touch on a couple of things too. We go on. I think we're going to keep our comments fairly brief, because really what this session is about is your question and trying to address any questions that you may have to help you answer any questions that you might be getting from your agents. And so what we'll do is I'll kind of go through a couple of points, and then we'll get to the Q&A near the end of our comments, and then kind of go through and answer some of the questions that you have. So I feel like, I think we all feel like that's an important part of the session. And so that's what we'll do today. So I wanted to kind of briefly discuss first, really the two policy changes that this webinar is focused on are the introduction of the coming soon status, and then also introduction of an NAR national policy for NAR MLSs called Clear Cooperation. And basically what the Clear Cooperation policy says is that if you market a property to the public, that you are required to list that property in the MLS for cooperation and compensation to other MLS participants within 1 business day. Really, that's the shorthand of that policy, and it requires that if you put a sign in the yard or you advertise on Facebook, that that policy requires that you have it in the MLS in some status. That policy was introduced by NAR at the beginning of this year. We followed the implementation timeline that put the policy in the MLS on May 1st. I think that's correct. And so that's really the timeline that the coming soon, or that the clear cooperation policy followed. But it also in a lot of markets necessitated the introduction of the potential for other listing statuses. And I'll let Jeff talk a little bit about that and the process for coming soon, which relates to clear cooperation, but is a separate policy. So Jeff, I'll let you talk a little bit about coming soon.
All right, thank you, Nick. And like Nick said, the clear cooperation rolled out almost simultaneously with the work we had been doing in the committee and at MAAR related to coming soon changes. Our intent was to roll it out earlier in the year, and it just didn't work out that way. And so they kind of rolled out together. And I think that created quite a bit of confusion because they're so similar, but they're two totally separate, different issues. But with coming soon, this is something that the board has worked on and the committee's worked on for a number of years. Tried to come up or formulate a process to deal with properties that were active in the system that were not available to be shown. And then in a lot of cases that perhaps were sold before they were available to be shown. And so as we got deeper into the market that we're in now, where stuff was selling in 24 hours with many, many offers on the table for the seller to consider, it began to bubble more to the surface as being problematic. And so my 2 years on the board in 17 and 18, we asked the committee to look at it again and try and come up with something that would be feasible for the board to adopt. And then as I rolled off the board, I rolled on to the MLS committee and worked there for 2 years. And we spent the better part of last year coming up with the coming soon status that was subsequently approved by the board late last year for rollout early this year. But basically what we were trying to address was a scenario where properties would go in the MLS midweek with no showings approved or allowed until an open house on Sunday, for instance. And invariably, that property may get sold sight unseen. They may let agents through early. There are just a lot of different scenarios that were occurring that was limiting that property's availability to the true buying market. So what we came up with was a coming soon status. And in coming up with that, we also had to modify what was an active listing. And I think as we rolled this out, we put the emphasis on the coming soon status more so than the change in the active status listing. So I think the important thing to remember is that an active status has been redefined to mean that that property is available for showing now. Once it goes active, showings really can't be limited with the exception of a seller not being able to show it for whatever reason. But to limit it to generate interest in the market is no longer acceptable. And that's where we came up with a coming soon status where we could get that initial marketing kind of kicked off, which is what we were doing by listing it midweek and holding it off showings until Sunday to generate that interest from the buying public. And it kind of leveled the playing field, so to speak. So we came up with a coming soon status and gave that agents an opportunity to publish market the property to the membership. The coming soon status is not pushed out to the third-party broker sites. It's only viewable by the MAAR members. And that way they could kind of plan and line up their folks that might have some interest in a particular property and be prepared to do what they needed to do in this strong market that we find ourselves in. But that in a nutshell is kind of what we've come up with. And like Nick said, I think we want to kind of open it up for you guys to ask questions so that we can clear up any misconceptions or misunderstanding on what our intent was and really what the board has adopted. Amanda, do you have anything to add?
No, I mean, not anything additional. I will say, just to reiterate what Jeff said, is that we did not just come up with this overnight. I was on the MLS committee several years ago for 2 years. This was a topic of conversation then. I was the board of directors MLS liaison for 2 years. This was a topic of conversation then, and then now I'm on the committee. It's been an ongoing thing. It's been an ongoing problem. But in the past, the committee as a whole and MAAR as a whole, we've been a little bit more reactionary, and we decided we can't be reactionary anymore. We need to head this off before the market does what it always does, which is get incredibly busy. And it just so happened that when we decided to do that, MAAR decided a similar thing. So they came out at the same time. Like he said, that wasn't the original intention, but it did work out that way. And so now we're just here to hopefully clarify some of the changes.
Excellent.
Absolutely. And I don't know if we've really gotten a lot of questions. Oh, no, here we are. I'm starting to see some. So I'll go through I think this is in order. Thomas Bird is asking, is there a time limit on how long a property can be held in coming soon status before the membership can view? Either one of y'all want to take that? Amanda?
I can take that one. So this was a long discussion, I think, on multiple different meetings. We talked about this as to whether or not we needed a time limit. There is currently not a time limit. It was discussed, do we say your max is 1 week, 2 weeks, a month, 6 months, what is it? And it was ultimately decided that we need to roll this out. We need to see how the membership is going to use it. And then if we determine that there is an abuse or a need to implement a time limit, we can do that after the fact. But we didn't want to put a restriction on a brand new policy and rule that might make it even more confusing. So as of right now, there is a date that you put in the MLS and on your sheet as to when you expect that you're going to make this property active, and it will go active that night at midnight, but you can also go in and change that date at any point. So as of right now, no, there is no rule.
And just to add to what Amanda mentioned, and it relates to really all the phases or processes or pieces of the coming soon change. And our intent was to get something in place and then watch it for 30, 60, 90, 120 days and reevaluate it at that point to see if we could improve it, if we need to make changes, and get feedback from the membership. So we've kind of created a process that's somewhat fluid so that we can amend it if we need to.
Okay. Another question is, it might be similar. When does the coming soon listing move to active, and does the coming soon listing have to disclose that date?
It goes to active automatically at the date that you put. When you put it in coming soon, you're going to have to put a date in which you expect it to go active. That will happen at midnight that night unless you change it beforehand.
And yes, you do have to disclose that date. That date is, it wasn't at first, but it's available on the MLS listing report. So yes, that date is part of the listing data.
I believe it's a required field, correct?
Yes.
Right.
This is an interesting one. What about listings that are entered and 2 minutes later changed to pending, or those listings that are going from contingent to sold, never pending? Any thoughts on that? I can answer some of that if you want.
I mean, I don't know if this directly pertains to coming soon, from it to go from coming soon to pending, because I don't think that that's an option. It has to go from coming soon to active, and you can't go backwards. But yes, there are still going to be instances where it goes from active to pending, or active to sold even. And in those cases, those should probably be flagged, and we should probably have a conversation with those agents as to what happened there. That would be an indication to me that maybe there was a violation that took place. And we'll probably say this multiple times in this panel, but that's something that if you see that, that's something that needs to be brought to the attention of MAAR staff.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that the progression of status in the MLS and the policy, they can't account for absolutely all situations. I mean, yeah, it's that is the progression from to pending, and then to maybe later closed, or could go to contingent in that case. You know, that the time frames involved in that are something that the MLS doesn't have tight control over, but may indicate a policy concern. But it also, there's some listings that do follow that process. I mean, there's no restriction on offers for a coming soon listing, except to say that if there is an offer received and entertained, that you ought to follow the appropriate status changes. And if those happen in one day, I mean, that could be the case. And so that bears some consideration when we're evaluating those. So that's good. I don't know if either of y'all disagree.
No, I think that the scenario with the listings going active and then within 30 minutes they're contingent is really I think that's a separate issue as a whole for the board to consider and look at and evaluate if there's a need for some direction there. As far as the coming soon status, you know, part of that whole agreement is that the seller agrees not to make it available for showing by anybody, including the listing agent. And really the idea and the biggest part of our discussion in coming up with this was, are we really representing our seller if we're taking 2 or 3 buyers through the property and not really exposing it to the 30 other that may have legitimate, even stronger offers to present? Is that representing the seller? And that ultimately is what our role is. It's not to you know, double-side it or you know, keep it in-house. It's really to represent the seller. And if that means you know, opening up to everybody, that's what we got to do. That's been our obligation forever. That's not a new concept. But as far as how the active to contingent so quickly plays in, the ones that I've seen have not gone through the coming soon status. So that's I think kind of that's falling into the clear cooperation, in my opinion, as to a possible issue or concern or violation. If they're out there marketing it and selling it and then pop it in MLS for comp purposes, you know, that's a whole nother animal to tackle.
Right. Another question, maybe we can cover quickly. If a property goes active today and states can't be shown until August 15th, shouldn't it actually be in coming soon?
Yes, because that is a direct violation of the definition of what an active listing is, which was changed when the clear cooperation and coming soon came out. The definition of an active listing is one that can be shown, period. There are exceptions for tenant occupied properties. Obviously, those are not always able to be shown. But if you put a listing in the MLS and you say that it can't be shown until the 15th, that should have gone in a coming soon status and you are in violation.
Okay. And there's some questions coming in on chat. I want to kind of catch some of those too. All right. I think the problem comes up of what the listing agent can do. For example, signs, Facebook, etc., while in coming soon. Let's see if anyone else also asked that question, to see if we can, because I've heard that question a lot and we'll answer it here shortly. Okay, so I don't know if either of y'all want to answer that, or if you want me to take that one.
I mean, I'm fine either way.
As far as what you can do in coming soon, I've heard it asked this way, so this kind of, there's the coming soon status, and then we kind of move over into clear cooperation, which again is, if you market a property, then you must list it in the MLS within 1 business day, and that listing in the MLS it can be in coming soon status, or it can be in the active status, and so the cooperation policy is not the core of it is not a restriction on marketing so much as it is a requirement that you list the property compensation and cooperation with cooperating brokers in the MLS. So, so when you list a property, whether it be in the coming soon status or the active status, the MLS rules and regulations are silent on what the listing brokers' marketing decisions are on that listing. Generally, the MLS rules and regulations don't place a lot of restrictions on the listing agent or listing brokers' decisions or ability to market a property listed in the MLS, just so long as a market property is listed in the MLS in either coming soon or active status. You can put a yard sign in the yard for a coming soon listing, and you can announce that social media post as long as at the point that you do that public marketing, you have marketed or you've listed the property in the MLS within one business day. I hope that covers it. I guess the only thing that the MLS sort of related to that the MLS won't do is coming soon listings aren't syndicated to third-party websites and portals or IDX websites or VAL websites. So the MLS isn't facilitating that marketing, but your decision to market on your own, either through a sign or a post to the public, that will fulfill the cooperation requirement of the clear cooperation policy. That's really where clear cooperation and coming run together. The two policies kind of run together quite a bit on occasion, and so sometimes it gets kind of difficult to separate them. I don't know if either of you have anything to add, Jeff or Amanda.
Yeah, I mean, I can give just a practitioner scenario. So if I go on a listing appointment and I get that seller to sign a listing agreement that we're going to list the property after, they want to do something to it in the next 7 days. So we're actually going to list it in 7 days. The MLS rule has always been, and still is, that if I get a listing agreement signed, I have to have that in the MLS in 1 business day. That has always been a rule and still is. So, but at that point I had to put it in as active because that was the only option we had. Now I can put it in as coming soon, be following that rule, and then I am allowed to put it on social media, a sign in the yard, whatever I want to advertise it as coming soon, and that is not a violation because clear cooperation states it needs to be in the MLS and offered for cooperation and compensation in one status or another. So coming soon answers that question. Then I can market it as much as I want. I'm only in violation of coming soon when I show it. If I decide that buyer calls me off that sign and I say, oh yeah, no big deal, I'm going to go show it to you right now, that is a violation because once I show it, then I'm required to make it open to the market, make it active in the MLS, have it be available to other buyers and other agents for showing. That's where the rule comes in. So that would be the progression of steps. But yes, you can advertise it as much as you would like to in coming soon. You just can't let anybody see it, but you can still create a buzz that way. And I feel like some people are concerned that what they were doing as a business strategy may not be allowed anymore. And it is, you just can't let people in the door.
And to take that a step further, I think that's a good scenario description. And the way I've been describing it would be perhaps we've always put a sign in the yard. And, that's going to have the drive-by traffic that's going to see that. But I've been describing it as, any kind of social media marketing as perhaps a virtual yard sign. You're getting different traffic. It's not necessarily drive-by, but you're getting traffic as long as you're disclosing that it's coming soon. And I saw one recently where it was disclosed fully that it was a coming soon listing, that it would be coming, within X number of days. Give me a call if you have questions, or have your agent give me a call. So, to me, that was a good strategy. It's putting it out there for benefit of the seller to generate some interest and some buzz. You can see it, but you can't touch it. Then that's going to probably generate the best kind of interest, and they ended up with multiple offers, I'm sure, when it was available later that week.
And I will say too, a question that I get a lot, and I think Nick and Jeff do too, I'll get a phone call or a text that says, hey, this realtor has put this sign in the yard and it says coming soon, or they've put a for sale sign in the yard, or they've posted on social media. Are they in violation? Well, as long as it's in the MLS in coming soon within 1 business day, no, they're not. Now, if it's 2 days, 3 days later, that sign's still in the yard and it's not in that MLS in any way, shape, or form, yes, that is a violation, and please report it.
Right.
So there are a lot of questions coming in, and I'm beginning to get the sense we may not get to all of them in the session, but we'll get to quite a few of them. And if we don't get to all of them, then we'll certainly by email on a response to those questions. So I just wanted to let everyone know that. Can you discuss the mechanics of setting up coming soon with the signed seller documentation? I can get into that, or if either of you want to address that.
What? Can you repeat the question?
The mechanics of setting up coming soon, in other words, the process. And so I'll explain to you from an MLS policy standpoint what it looks like, and that would be that, of course, you would have to have a listing agreement signed first with the seller. And then there's a standalone agreement that's available on MAAR's website called the Coming Soon Listing Certification. It's not an addendum to the listing agreement. It started out that way, but it was separated from the listing agreement as more of a standalone document. But that Coming Soon Listing Addendum listing certification addresses some important points about the use of the Coming Soon status with your seller. And so definitely review and sign or have your seller sign that document. That document must be attached to your MLS listing when you go to enter the listing. So you enter the listing, all the fields that are required for an active listing are required for a coming soon listing. And so you would still go through that, but also as you switch over to the coming soon status, you would have a projected active date. That's available there for you to use, and that projected active date is the date on which that listing will automatically change from coming soon listing to an active listing. And then once you get that listing entered and submitted, then you would need to immediately turn around and attach that coming soon listing certification to the listing in Paragon. Trying to think, this might bring me to the answer to another question, which is about. I know that we've had a lot of input from members about members who either haven't attached those coming soon listing certifications, or a listing that may be outside of the policy here, and sort of what are we doing to tackle those. And the board has just passed enforcement policy on these that requires certain parts of the policy to be addressed, or there will be automatic sanctions from MLS. And I don't have them on hand right now, but I can look them up. But essentially, they are. You may be familiar with the $30 fine situation, and these fines are ones that, because of the nature of the rules, are like a fine that recurs until the violation is cured. And so those are it's a little bit about some of the enforcement policy that goes along with that. But that really kind of addresses some of the mechanics in the process for entering a coming soon listing. And I didn't know if either of you had anything to add, or I could jump on to another question.
I'm good with that explanation.
I'm good. I think we can go on to the next one.
Are coming soon listings available to present offers?
Amanda?
This was a conversation for a while as well. And the answer is yes, correct? So
Yes.
I've seen a couple comments in different places on the chat and in the questions about blind offers. And yes, that's still allowed. We can't prevent a buyer from saying, I want to make an offer on this house. Now, the only way the buyer knows about the house is because their agent told them about the house, or they saw something on social media or a sign. Because again, to reiterate, this is not syndicated to third-party sites. So they're getting the information direct from the property somehow, or from you as their agent. If they want to make a blind offer, contingent on physical inspection in 5 days and, cash and full price, yes, if you receive that offer, you can then present it and you can have that conversation with your seller. Mr. Seller, do you want to go with this and be done with this? Or do you want me to open it up to the market, give it a chance there and see if we can do better? Or if they want to just take it and move on, that's fine too. But yes, you are allowed to receive and present offers while it's in the coming soon status if that happens and that's what your seller chooses to do.
I'll add just a little bit of commentary to that. There are other MLSs in the country who have, who've taken it on to restrict the presentation of offers, and that can become a slippery slope for the MLS to get into. And I think the MLS committee chose to back away from that, at least, in their discussion. And so that approach wasn't taken in Memphis, and that was a good discussion that I think the MLS committee had about that, and that was the choice made. But that restriction really isn't there, and thanks for pointing that out, Amanda.
Can I add something real quick?
Sure.
Okay, to piggyback off both of these comments, I think the important thing to remember is that if an offer does come in, and we'll assume that it's a blind offer, like Nick said, we had a lot of conversation that spanned several different meetings on this particular issue. And we obviously can't control offers coming in, but again, like Amanda said or noted, are we really representing our seller, our client, to the fullest extent if we're going to keep it down to one, knowing that we could possibly get 5 others that may be stronger terms? And that's really what you should sell your client on. And they may not want to go that route. And if they don't, then they're giving us direction, and we have to follow their direction. That's part of our duty. But I would certainly encourage agents to be well documented, because now this is probably going to be an issue where things might be brought to the board's attention, and you'd want to be documented well in that scenario, just to be able to say, hey, this is the scenario, this is what happened. My seller guided me, and I followed his instructions.
Good point. Thank you, Jeff. What happens to a listing agent when they have a coming soon listing and the listing goes pending before the active date?
Well, I mean, my thought is we have to know about it. So I guess I will say there are some, scanning things that are in place that MLS staff can do. They can search for specific words. They can search for status changes that maybe happened incorrectly, but they cannot see everything. So it is on us to report when something like that happens, but the staff may also get it. Yes, Nick.
Oh, no, so go ahead. Well,
I thought you were raising your hand, correct me. Go for it.
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, I mean, that very well may happen. I mean, if there is that sight unseen offer that's made, then the natural progression of that listing might be to, I think it has to go to an active status first, but you can manually go in and make that active status and then to the pending status. So that might be the active path through which that listing follows because of a valid offer made unseen, which, I mean, yeah, it's nice to be able to get into a situation where, people can see the listing, but some don't follow that process. But you were also explaining another scenario where, well, I'll let you finish what you were saying, but I just wanted to
Well,
point.
I mean, I think that the process at that point would be, if something like that happens, it does raise a red flag. There's 100% the possibility that it was a blind offer. The seller opted to go with that and not open it up to the market. It goes immediately to active and then pending, and it's done. And that would be one of those things where, you call MLS support, you call the agent direct, whatever you feel like doing, and say, hey, what happened here? Why did this happen? And there is definitely a scenario where that is completely acceptable. There's also scenarios where it's not. And where there's 4,000 of us. Educating all of us at the same time is going to be next to impossible. So that's part of the reason we're having this broker panel, so that y'all can help spread this word accurately. But it's still going to be on us to have those conversations with either MLS staff and support or the agent's direct. How did this happen? Why did this happen? And then if it seems like there's a violation, that agent needs to be educated. And either you can educate them if you feel like it, nicely, please, or you can notify MLS staff support and they will help educate them.
Mm-hmm. And just something I wanted to add, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the MLS committee, and my understanding is sort of observing the outcomes of the policies that were put in place. I think the committee and the board felt like the implementation as it is now was the best thing to address a situation where there was an absence of policy. And so yeah, you can't understand everything about what's happening based on the order that statuses go and what the timing is of that. But we can certainly gain a lot more insight about agent behavior when we can go back and review some of the things the way they're happening now and make whatever necessary changes in the future. Is that kind of correct, Jeff?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And so expiration date on the amendment or the certificate. I think I'm scanning that question real quick, but it's a question about the updating the projected active date on a listing. So the policy for updating projected active date, if during the time that the listing is incoming soon, you wanted to stretch that projected active date out further, then what you would need to do is get a new listing, a new coming soon listing certification signed with the seller with the new projected active date and attached to the listing in order to extend that. At the point where you've passed that date, you can't go back. You can't go back to coming soon, even to the point of it. If we could make it go back, it could mess up. It could really sort of mess up some of the system rules and functionality as concerns that listing in the MLS. And so that really is a hard stop. When you pass that coming soon projected active date, it goes active, and it really has to stay active. There's no going back at that point if you haven't done that extension. I just sort of handled that one all on my own. Let's see. What is the process of reporting a violation and subsequent consequence for a violation? And I need to look those up real quick while you all get into that. The process for reporting is really still that correction button. There is in Paragon, when you are viewing a listing, you'll see a correct at the top of the default report display. There's a little button that says correction, and you can use that to send us a note, and it includes the listing information in there, and you can say you can point out what you see that's wrong with that listing, and we'll take action on that. Once I get the prescribed sanctions pulled up, then I will share my screen with those. But I'm going to go on to another question here.
I saw one.
Let me add two.
Oh, go ahead.
Let me add two real quick. I think the best approach would be to use that correction button because there's a paper trail as opposed to calling and just leaving a message or whatever. When you use that button, you get a response back saying, thanks for helping us keep MLS accurate. So I would recommend using and making sure agents understand that that's there. I use it frequently.
I saw one question just because I scrolled through real quick, and it's a very quick answer.
Okay.
I assume that the days on market start to accumulate when the listing is actually active and not in the coming soon status. Yes, that is correct. Your days on market do not start until it goes active. We're not going to accrue a whole bunch of days in coming soon status. We'll know how many days it's been in coming soon status, but it does not count towards your ultimate days on market or cumulative days on market.
Okay. I think we already answered this one. Does the status preclude someone from making a blind offer? No. I lost track of the questions. I don't know if y'all had spotted.
I know I skipped down to that bottom one. I'm sorry. The very
Okay.
first one that I think we haven't answered yet was from Bill Bates. And is there a rule? Is there a rule about what happens if the listing agent shows the property coming soon status? Yes, the listing agent nor any other agent is supposed to show the property when it's in coming soon status. The second it is shown by the listing agent, or if that listing agent lets somebody else in it, they are supposed to be making it active immediately and opened up to the rest of the market.
Yeah, that as a matter of policy, that listing must become active. Absolutely, and that's detailed in those rules. Let's see.
And I would like to add to that. I would keep in mind too, in sharing this and helping your agents understand these changes that we've made. That scenario to me would be an ethics violation. So that goes beyond just a $30 penalty. That gets even more serious and potentially more costly if an agent's out there doing that. I mean, that's a biggie in my opinion.
And Jeff, I'm glad you said the $30 thing, because I think that is the second part to Madam President's question about the reporting a violation and subsequent consequence. The consequence is $30 a day fine until that issue is remedied.
Right.
Okay, here's the three-parter, and I'm really kind of trying to decipher this for a second. When an agent puts in comments, all offers will be presented to the seller at 4 p.m. on Sunday, and the listing was put in Friday. Two questions I have with this practice. One, just being the anticipation of an offer, is this a good practice? Or two, if an offer comes in mind and is accepted before the 4 p.m. Sunday date that was mentioned. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of jump in front of this question just a little bit, because I want to try and keep the content of our webinar focused on MLS policy. And sometimes some things can kind of go over into a question about whether it was something other than MLS policy that may have been allegedly violated in a situation like that. So just taking that in mind, just being the anticipation of an offer, is this a good practice? Let me have y'all take this, or what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I would say that we as an MLS committee cannot say whether it's good practice or not, but I think we can say that it's not a violation as long as the property is active and being shown.
I agree. And it's funny that this question came up because I had an agent, a conversation with an agent in my office yesterday, and just talking about the market in general. And he listed a property recently, used that verbiage really before he even began to get offers, apparently. And that time came and went with no offers. The showings were out the door, but no offers in hand, and the seller's freaking out thinking, what's going on? He ended up in multiple offers about 48 hours later. But to me, I use that when I'm in multiple offers. I don't get ahead of myself. And that's just been the practice that I've used all these years. I don't want to jinx the situation by getting the cart before the horse, I guess. But that doesn't represent a violation. to some extent could be misleading if somebody wanted to pursue that to the public. So I would err on the side of caution, but I don't know globally that it's a violation, but I think it's used in a lot of different ways than what I would have assumed that I use it for. Mm-hmm. That's all.
There's another concerned question in Q&A that perhaps allowing a sign in the yard and marketing while incoming soon could be just a way for the for the listing agent to receive calls. Get calls and inquiries only for the listing agent, and so I imagine that that can be a concern. Do y'all have any comment on that? Allowing the sign in social media when a house is incoming soon, there's only one reason to do that, and that would be to get calls and inquiries only for the listing agent.
I will say that I don't necessarily disagree with that is a tactic that agents have. Still not a violation as long as they're not showing the property to somebody, and as long as they're doing what they're supposed to do with asking if you're already working with a realtor, and if you've signed an exclusive buyer's rep agreement, then you don't need to touch it. But I mean, I can't say that it's not a violation. Is that a practice that people have? Absolutely. But I would equate it to having an open house with the intention not necessarily be to sell the house, but to pick up customers.
Right. I agree. I don't think, unless you take and use that information unethically, I think that's just part of the sales process.
Is it possible to allow scheduling coming soon showings for the day it is available to show? For example, a house is listed on Monday as coming soon and will be available on Saturday. Can a buyer's agent call on Monday to schedule a showing appointment for Saturday?
I saw that question. Yeah, I mean, if you handle your own appointments, then yes, but I don't believe it goes into showing time or any of the appointment centers until it goes active. So you would be scheduling your own appointments if that were the case. But yes, I would think an agent could call you and say, hey, I want to see if the second it goes on the market is active, I want to be first. And yes, if you wanted to schedule your own appointments, you could do that.
Got it. And I haven't been dismissing the questions, all of them. Yeah, I'll just add to that a little bit. From a policy standpoint, that's true. Right now, we don't have any sort of technical integration set up or anything that handles that automatically. So I would agree. What's the best way to report an active listing that is not allowing showings until a few days later? That would be that correction button. That's the quickest way. And a thing to point out about that restriction on showings, I don't know if Amanda mentioned it earlier, is that restriction is not something, when it's made on the listing and the remarks, it's not something that we have to really do a lot of work in determining whether there was actually a restriction on showings for that active listing. If it says there's no showings on an active listing, at that point, just by nature of there being a restriction listed in remarks, is a restriction on showings, and so that would be one that we would follow up on right away as being sort of inconsistent with the policy.
And can I add too that something that I've run across too that will probably generate some complaints or concerns, and that is an agent controlling the dialogue to the extent where they've got in the system there really aren't any publicly disclosed restrictions, but when you call the appointment center to schedule the showing, you've got to call either the listing agent or you've got to call, it's got to be confirmed, but it's not a typical confirming with the seller, and we'll get back to you in 30 minutes. It's controlling the narrative essentially. And I think that's to some extent, perhaps a scenario where folks are trying to use that as a loophole. So we're on to it.
Gotcha. Coming soon, listing certification form. You can find it, and we probably need to do a better job of linking to it from within the MLS, and I'll try and share my screen here. So you should be able to see my screen. If you go to over the membership menu item here, hopefully y'all can see my screen. Panelists, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
So forms and contracts under membership, where there's a whole slew of forms and contracts from MAAR. This will be under the listing forms section, coming soon listing certification. That was coming soon listing certification right there, under listing forms, under membership and forms and contracts. And this is what it looks like. And basically it is it's just sort of a standalone certification that the seller acknowledges. And we go through some of the key points regarding use of the status. And you can definitely have a look at this document over there at the MAAR website. I'm going to, though, stop sharing my screen so I can see everybody. But we can definitely link to that later. Either of y'all see any other questions to get to before we start wrapping the session up?
I saw there was a comment in the chat that Lisa Thomas said her question had not been answered, and it's actually, I think, the next one on there. There's still 12 questions in the Q&A. Some of them are probably duplicates, but to answer Lisa's, is there monitoring of the listings that show active, but the remarks show a coming soon date for showings? Yeah, we talked about that just a little bit earlier. MLS staff does have a system that can scan remarks and date changes very easily. So can we do a search daily to say, you know, showings start, that's phrase to find those? Yes, we can, but also it is helpful if an agent sees a new listing get listed and that's what it says, please report it.
Mm-hmm. Something interesting that I'll just address, thanks Amanda, about that is MLS staff can't manually go through and scan for MLS violations unless we can be confident that we can see absolutely every violation of a certain type in the MLS. The only way we could do that is to have some automated system with a predefined set of documentation and criteria that we know we'll be able to reliably step through every listing looking for a specific set of criteria that might point out a violation. And we are in the process of doing some of that documented scanning, but that's ongoing. And most of the time we're in the situation of if MLS staff can't scan manually, then we rely on members to send that input to us because really it is we're relying on your peers to help police the MLS system, and so it really is incumbent on members to report any type of violation that they might see.
Neil asks, is there a FAQ on these topics on the MAAR site or Paragon? I know it was discussed, but I don't know if one got done.
Yep, we're working on it. I'm sorry that's not out there. The list of questions keeps growing, and that's part of that. And so we tend to refer to some of the documentation that we've released previously, but I think it's good that we get it all in one place so that everybody can see that. And that's what we're in the process of doing now. I know we probably haven't been able to get to all these questions, and they're kind of all blurring up on me here. But I know that we'll try to address those after we end the call and trying to get those out by email to all of the attendees about any of the questions that might not have been answered. I didn't know if there were any final thoughts, Amanda or Jeff, or anything you think we missed.
I mean, my final thought, I guess, synopsis would be: one, an active listing is one that can be shown. If you can't show it, please don't put it as active. It needs to go in as coming soon. And I had another one, but now I forgot it. Jeff, you go. I'll think.
I agree with that. I mean, just the basics would be, and again, like we start off with, the change in the active status, I think kind of helps assimilate the rest of the changes that we made. And that is, if it's active, it needs to be available to be ready to be shown. And then the rest just kind of falls into place.
Yeah. I remembered my other one. I just, a general rule of thumb would be for the whole question of what can a listing agent do that's different from everybody else? Nothing. If your buyers can't see it, nobody's buyers can see it. It's an inclusive, the clear cooperation and the coming soon is an inclusive rule and regulation and policy that if my buyers can't see it, nobody's buyers can see it, because that's not fair if I wanted to put just a one word, response to that.
Or ethical. That's not ethical.
Yeah,
either.
ethical is better. Yes, thank you.
Just one thing that I'll reiterate that I think has gotten a lot of discussion also leading up to this webinar, and I've heard come up various things in the in sort of the questions that were put together, was that concern about advertising. We've probably beaten it to death already, but advertising while incoming soon or marketing while incoming soon, and I think that NAR had seemed to in their MLS committee meetings, had sort of deep discussion about that, and sort of steered clear of making that policy, the clear cooperation policy, a restriction on marketing. Instead, it's a requirement to cooperate. And so they're using, I think the NAR policy there, my interpretation is that it's using marketing as a trigger for when you would cooperate, and a local policy is up to local MLSs, and in MAAR's situation, the MLS committee and board chose to leave the marketing decisions of brokers alone, and that they could do that how they wish. But I think that Jeff runs a good committee, and we can all consider any further policy changes that need to be made or concerns that grow out of our members' use of the current system the way it is.
Can I add too? I mean,
Sure.
I think everyone would agree this is not an exact science. Nothing that we do is an exact science. All we can do is come up with processes that make our job easier to represent our client in the best possible way. And if we need to tweak things, we're going to tweak them. I mean, that's just Murphy's Law, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess that's it. I know there's probably some folks that we haven't gotten to, but I appreciate the discussion, and I'm always fascinated to hear from practitioners talk out their side of things, because I'll admit I'm not a realtor, but I do my best to put on a realtor hat as I'm thinking through some of these things, and Amanda and Jeff, you guys do a good job of helping me understand, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate everyone who's attended the session, taking the time to learn about a policy that I think is important. And we really appreciate your attendance and your good questions, and we'll try and get back to some answers to those that we haven't gotten to soon by email. So I appreciate it, and I hope everyone has a great afternoon, and be safe, be good. We'll see y'all later.
Thanks,
Thank you, everyone.
All right, bye-bye.